الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing in our lessons on the fiqh of marriage, a concise summary. Today inshallah we'll continue from where we left off in section 2.5. So inshallah, going forward, I will place the titles of the chapters of these different topics into sections. That way it becomes easier to refer back to them and to see what part of the process we are on. So here we'll call it section 2.5, compatibility or equivalence. So we spoke about last week in some detail what qualities the man, a potential husband, should have and what qualities a potential wife should have. And we mentioned quite a bit of them with some explanations. With all that being said, we now need to pay attention to the most important, I believe, quality of them all, which is whether or not the man and the woman are compatible. And this is called al-kafa'atu. Al-kafa'atu refers to, in the language of fiqh, as compatibility, or sometimes is translated as equivalence. So now that we know the qualities that someone should have, the key question that a person who is getting married should be asking is whether or not they are compatible with the potential spouse, right? The match that they are looking for, the person that they have been advised or referred to, etc. So compatibility, the ulama or scholars, when they talk about nikah, they have a long discussion, quite lengthy one, in relation to compatibility, al-kafa'atu. And they have said many things about it. But the idea is that marrying someone compatible is something which is acceptable in the sharia and according to logic. The ulama, some of them, they argued using proofs, as I mentioned some of them, for the need for compatibility. And they went so far as some of them to discuss whether or not it's a condition for the validity of the marriage. And the correct position is, Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam, is that it's not a condition, but it's something which should be observed. Because if the two parties are not compatible, then soon they will not continue the marriage. They will find division and incompatibility, which could lead to divorce. So the proof here for this idea of compatibility is the hadith. The Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah great authentic in the Sahiha, hadith number 1067. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم تخيروا لنطفكم وانكحوا الأكفاء وانكحوا إليهم. He said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, choose the best for your seed. Literally he used the term nutaf, which refers to the sperm of the man, but here it's referred to the child, like the seed, as if it's an example of planting a seed and growing. So he's saying, choose the best for your seed, marry the compatible women, and propose marriage to them. So here, al-akfa'a refers to compatible people, i.e. the women who are compatible to the men and the men who are compatible to the women. And this hadith, like I said earlier, some of the scholars differed over its authenticity, but Imam Al-Albani rahimahullah authenticated it, and many of the scholars, they use this in their discussions. They use it in the discussions about compatibility. Many of the scholars, when they talk about compatibility, they examine what qualities are necessary in order for a potential husband and wife to be compatible. I.e., what categories of things, or what departments or categories should they be compatible, i.e. should they have similarity in. And some of the ulama, they mention four arenas where a husband and wife should find equivalence or compatibility. The term compatibility means that they are similar in this regard, so therefore more likely to have a sustainable relationship. First arena, it comes to the religion. So they have to be compatible when it comes to religiosity, how religious each one is. And this is obviously, as we mentioned earlier, both husband and wife should be people of deen, as Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam encouraged and commanded us to look for those who are religious. The recommendation is strong, and the benefits are much. And so if one of them is more religious than the other, or vice versa, one of them is off in their religiosity, then it could lead to a problem. And we said this before last week, that marrying someone at your level, or even above it, can be good encouragement to move forward. But you don't want someone who is significantly different than you, because you're not going to be on the eye to eye in many of the things that you might practice or you might be seeking in your marriage. Very important. And so from that region, the ulama, they came from this arena, they came to the discussion about marrying people of different ideologies and sects and etc. And obviously, it comes clear, you should marry the people of the Sunnah, those who value the Quran and Sunnah, those who put the religion forward, those who follow Tariq al-Salaf, because those people you're going to find with you, inshallah, if the person adhering to this path will find absolute compatibility. Next, they said they should be both free. They should find people who are freedom. Freedom here means that they're not, nobody's a slave. Obviously in our societies this is not applicable, but in the past, a free person would marry another free person, because in terms of their freedom, it would be a big hindrance if one party was, a slave or free slave. We're talking about. As for a free slave, then they're still they're not a slave anymore. They're free. And the reason why, obviously, is if a man marries a slave, then it has implications for his offspring. Obviously, this one's taken for granted in our times, because the answer is everyone is free. Thirdly, profession. And this is very interesting. Some of the ulama said you have to take a look at the profession of the husband who's proposing, the suitor. Same way, if the family is of a higher social income, a social standing, they're looking for someone who has equal profession or standing. For example, if the entire family is doctors and they want that as a standard, they're all doctors. They want for their daughter, they want a man who's a doctor. But some ulama said this consideration of profession is important, because he won't be able to live up to their expectations. And this is something which is both shar'an wa aqla, right? Both legislative discussion, because the hadith is mere compatible, but also in terms of the intellect, in that if a person comes to a group of people, a family who's all doctors, and he isn't a doctor, and they want a doctor, and they still know he isn't, they may pressure him or belittle his contributions and his standing because of that. And of course, not a good situation for either of them. All right, not to say that these are the most important things. Right? So no one should misunderstand me. I'm not saying these are these last two especially. The first one for sure, but the last two, I'm not saying it's correct or not. I'm just saying what the ulama have mentioned. We'll get to the more clear answer in a minute. So profession. So for example, some of the fuqaha, they say the jurists, if a man is marrying into a family, let's say they have a higher profession, typically, and he has a lower profession. And this is important. And society decides what's a high profession or low profession. But just know, all professions which are halal are good. Then it could be trouble for him. This is what they're intending. Lastly, solvency, the wealth. All right, so somebody's marrying into a richer family, so higher social, economic standing, and he's a lower social status, then obviously he might have a hard time providing for her, because that what she's expected, and it's from the urf, وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, and live with them honorably, they may be expecting a lot more than he's offering, and that's obviously what they consider. With all this being said, if someone wants more on this, they can see these 4 points. Shaykh Salih Fawzan's Kitab Fiqh Summary, right? The fiqh summary, or the summary of the jurisprudence. Shaykh Salih Fawzan, volume 2, page 367 to 368. Interesting benefit. Now, the ulama, they mention, even though they mention these 4 arenas, after much discussion, and also it's important to add, some of them to add nasab there. They say lineage, for example. Quraysh, someone from the Qurayshi background, he needs to marry someone of that same status, or someone who's within that same family because of their status is higher. Or others, they say, for example, this ethnicity and that. So the other types of compatibility that some of the people of knowledge and the laity have also considered. But what's interesting about when it comes to professions, I found Allama Siddiq Hassan Khan, rahimahullah, who died 1248 Hijri, he interestingly writes, the highest considerable profession when it comes to compatibility in marriage, unrestrictedly, is ilm, knowledge. It's a very nice benefit. He says the number one, the highest considerable profession. Because some people will say, well, my daughter, she wants an engineer. Or my son, he needs to marry another doctor, etc. He says, the Shaykh Siddiq Hassan Khan, rahimahullah, the highest considerable profession when it comes to compatibility in marriage, unrestrictedly, is ilm. And the dalil is the hadith. Rasulullah said the scholars are the inheritors of the Prophet. Right? Prophets. Hadith in Sahih, right? So here, no one's job standing, no one's job or profession can be higher than the ulama. And this is mentioned in this Kitab Rawdatul Nadiyya, volume 2, page 20 to 21. So it's a beautiful benefit, because sometimes we may hear in our culture someone say, someone's a doctor, someone's an engineer, but if they hear someone's a talib ilm, they think miskeen, he's a miskeen, he doesn't have anything. But the reality, as we said already, the number one thing that's going to benefit the marriage is the person who's upon the deen. So you find talib ilm or ahl ilm, and that's the best what you can get. That's the highest profession. Right? Alhamdulillah. With that all being said, the scholars, when they mention all of these things, no one denies that compatibility should be considered. But they differ in terms of which one is more weighty or should be given more weight within the marriage search or search for a spouse. And so the bottom line is, the more correct opinion, Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam, that many of the scholars have made their final conclusion, is that the only two real considerable compatible points, i.e. that's not the only considerable, but the most important, therefore I should say, the most important, that's the better way of saying it, the most important consideration for compatibility is religion and good character. Because the ahadith, they prove this. And this was the tarjih of many scholars. For example, Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah in Silsil al-Ahadith al-Sahihah, volume 3, page 57, and others before him, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and others, they discussed this, even though they also discussed the other elements as well. So many scholars, they came to the conclusion, if you look at the textual evidences, number two top things you should consider that are very important is someone's religiosity and character. Everything after that, it's a bonus if there is similarity or there's compatibility. Now, with that being said, if someone has compatibility or equivalence in their religion, i.e. they're following the same tariq, they're following, a man and woman are following the same practice of deen, i.e. same level, same methodology, and they both have good manners, does that mean automatically they're compatible? The answer is no. It's a little more tricky than that. And this is why this topic needs consideration and deep reflection. Because many people, they may rush into marriage looking only at these points without considering other factors which are important for the stability of their relationship. So now I want to mention, what other evidences do we have, and what other things can we consider when it comes to compatibility? So we did earlier, some scholars added profession, some said both of them have to be obviously free people, they have to have maybe similar social standing, and these are something is good consideration. Because if a certain family you're trying to marry into has those considerations, that's a good way to make agreement. What about ethnicity? What about, for example, similarity in culture, similarity in language, similarity in lineage? These are considerations that the people of knowledge also mention. And it would not be wise to ignore them if you know that they're important to the other party. Right? This is important. You have to have awareness of these things. But from the Sunnah, we do find other things you can consider. And we're going to mention 3 of them. And then the rest of them, obviously, the person himself has to decide what their preferences are. Because at the end of the day, if someone has good religion and character, the rest boils down to what they want and what they're going to settle for versus what they don't want and what they're not going to compromise for. It goes back to the individuals. Because you're allowed to have preferences. But the deen says you have to marry someone with good deen and good khuluq. So I want to mention the first one. First additional consideration, similarity or closeness in age. So many times we hear about this, but we don't actually hear about this mawdu'. Is it advisable to marry someone significantly older or to marry someone significantly younger? The ulama, they speak about this. Firstly, they say it's permissible to marry someone older or younger. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did both. Right? So for example, when he married Salama radiyallahu ta'ala anha, she was older than him. Also Khadija radiyallahu ta'ala anha, she was older than him. And then he married those who were younger, like Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha. So what do we take from this? The permissibility of marrying older and younger is there. But is it recommended to marry someone within your age bracket? Many of the proofs show yes. وَدِلِلُ ذَلِكَ Hadith Abdullah ibn Burayda radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. It was narrated by Abdullah ibn Burayda from his father. Abu Bakr and Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. Abu Bakr and Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. They proposed to marry Fatima bint Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they both came to marry her, imagine Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, it's not someone to turn away. Umar ibn al-Khattab, not someone to turn away. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Innaha saghira." He told them she's very young. Then Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu sometime later came and proposed for Fatima's hand, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam married her off to him. Hadith Sahih, Sunan Nasa'i, Hadith number 3020. What does this hadith mean and what does it prove? Mullah Ali Qari rahimahullah, he writes with ayat 1014 Hijri, Mullah Ali Qari, he says this hadith can be carried to mean that she was young when both of these great companions proposed. The first meaning is possible that she was young when they came to seek her hand, or that when she got older and she reached 15 years of age, when she reached 15 years of age, Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu came to propose to her. So that means that Ali was, according to the evidences, he was about 20 or so. Allah ta'ala alam, we can double check, right? But around that age, and she was 15. So he says that when Ali came, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he said to the other two, Abu Bakr and Umar, that she's young, means she's young in consideration to them because they're older in age. But he married her off to Ali due to them being suitable in age, due to his suitability of his age to her, or because of the revelation, maybe Allah revealed revelation to him that they should be married off. And this is found in Minqa'a Mafatih, Sharh Mishkat Masabih, volume 1, page 259. So it's a great benefit to show that Ali radiallahu anhu was not that much older than Fatima when he got married to her. So if she was 15, he was about 20 something, around 20 or so, as if I remember correctly, Imam al-Zahabi rahimahullah, he mentions. So what you take from this is what Imam al-Nasa'i himself, the Sahib al-Sunan, Imam al-Nasa'i died 303 Hijri. Imam al-Nasa'i, he writes, chapter, a woman marrying someone who is similar in age. So brothers and sisters, we take some great benefit from this. In our time today, when we often people marry within the age bracket, and you find taqarub sin, closeness in age, this is totally fine. And this is one of the means to gain compatibility. Because that's what Mullah Ali Qari mentioned. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam considered Ali as more appropriate. Not that he's better than Abu Bakr and Umar. Pay attention. He's not better than them. But when it comes to this particular chapter, he's more suitable for them. And for her. And therefore Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam preceded one who is more suitable over those who have more virtues. Shaykh Muhammad bin Adam Ethiopi, rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy upon him, who recently passed away, he writes in Sharh Sunan Nasa'i, volume 27, page 58, that As-Sindi, Abu Hassan As-Sindi, the Sharih of Sunan Nasa'i, Ibn Majah and others, he said, in the hadith is proof for the agreement in age, or considerable nearness of age, due to it being closer in forming a harmony and affinity between the spouses. Then the Shaykh says, Shaykh Etobi says, rahimahullah himself, observing the nearness in marriage is that which obtains the objective of marriage, which is the maintaining of affinity and love between the spouses. See, this is the ulama who are saying this, great benefit. And this is important to source our work back to the ulama. When we go back to their books and their material, we'll learn great benefits and we take precaution from mistakes. Now, is it wrong, as I said earlier, is it wrong to marry older or younger? No. But if someone marries within their age, inshallah, closer to having understanding, because they have some similar references, they can understand one another, keep up with one another, they have probably the same experiences with one another. Also, it could also help not one feeling that the other one is out of touch. And this is a human reality. But that doesn't negate that if someone is older, but more virtuous or more compatible, even despite their age, then that's okay. Just like if someone is younger and they're still compatible, no problem. We're not saying that only equal age should be marrying. We're saying to keep age, similar age in consideration, amru mashru'. It's an affair which is legislated. Number 2, and this is probably the most important one, number 2 and 3, compared to this, alongside this, is to marry someone who you find strong attraction, love, and a chemistry. I believe the term chemistry is what's used nowadays. Strong attraction and love. The ulama, they mention this as another consideration, and probably one of the ones that people, they tend not to think is Islamic. And this one is important. Many people, they may think that when you're getting married, it's just deen and khulaq. But no, it's Sharia says love and attraction as well. Very important. which means that if two parties love each other, and what I mean by that, I'm going to explain. They are attracted to one another. They find one another good looking, i.e. in their eyes, and this will help foster deeper ties of love. ودليل ذلك is the following. Because some people may ask, can love occur before marriage? The answer is na'am. What's this hadith? Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma narrates that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, a man came to Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and said, we have an orphan girl who was proposed to by a man. So we have in our custody an orphan girl who was proposed to by a man who has no wealth. And then another man came to propose to her and he has wealth. She personally inclines to the one who has no wealth, but we prefer the one who has wealth. This is a quite common maybe situation. So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hearing this, they're asking him, what should we do? Who should we proceed? And so Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said a very powerful hadith. He says there is nothing like marriage for two people who love one another. This hadith, it says, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لم نرى للمتحابين مثل النكاح. We do not know. There is nothing similar to marriage for two people who love one another. And this hadith reported originally in Ibn Majah and has other turuq, other also routes. Shaykh Nasir, Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah in Silsila Ahadith al-Sahihah, number 624, he said hadith sahih. What do we take from this hadith? Many benefits. And the first one is, Rasulullah used the term, we do not see anything like marriage for two people who love one another. He used the word love. Some riwayat say mutahabbaini or mutahabbina, right? Or baina, or so it can come in the dual form or the plural form. Either case, the hadith, what does it mean? Now, why does Rasulullah refer to these two being two people who love one another? Mullah al-Qari again in Mirqah, he says, volume 5, page 2048. According, this is the Maktaba Shamil, I think, the raqam. So this is the numbering according to Maktaba Shamil. So the number is maybe different than the print. He says, if he looks at a strange woman, this is what, pay attention to this, what he means, because many people believe love can come before marriage, which is wrong. It's not a correct opinion. He says, if he looks at a strange woman, man, imagine a man, he found a strange woman or saw a strange woman on the street, and then when he looks at her, he finds that he's captivated. She captivates his heart because of her beauty. In that case, he should marry her. Means because he found attraction, because it will lead to an increase in love. Pay attention. This is very important. This is what's intended, attraction. Because there's no point in two people getting married and they don't like one another, or they are not attracted to one another because they don't have the affinity. It's one aspect. I'm not saying it's the only thing. It's one of the aspects. And like I said, some people say, but doesn't love only happen after marriage? Well, jawab, love can happen before marriage, and it increases. The true love comes after marriage. The true love comes after marriage. And we'll explain this point next week in relation to more details about the proposal scenario. So there's no negation between this hadith and ayah fi Surah Al-Rum, because many people say, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Some people say, but didn't Allah say from His signs is that He has created from you, for you, from your own selves, for you, spouses, so you may find repose in them, and He has put between you affection and mercy. Verily, in that is indeed signs for people who reflect. So they say that here it shows marriage is the only place to bring love. And that shows not that point, but rather what it proves is that beforehand you may have attraction or infatuation based on appearance. And after you get married, then the true love comes and lengthens. And this is a view that was mentioned by Ibn Hazm, rahimahullah, because he mentions in his book, The Ring of the Dove, he says that it's possible to have love before marriage, i.e. love at first sight, but he says really the true love comes after long togetherness. Then there's no ishkal here. There's no ishkal, because some people, they may think that Islam just says you get married to somebody strictly only based on the deen and the khuluq, as if there is no supposed to be any kind of attraction. Another interpretation of the hadith mentioned by Al-Tibi was that if we were to assume that these two were not practicing, when you pay attention, this is actually very interesting. He says, if you could also interpret the hadith, he says that if there were these two people were already in love beforehand, like nowadays, billah, wallahu musta'an, it may be the case that two people already fell in love. Maybe they were in a haram relationship, and then they want to get married. He said this will lead to the love staying and protected. But if they do the zina and the haram, then the love is going to go away. And so we take a benefit from this, that it could be interpreted more than one way. Abu Hassan al-Sindi, he says in Hashiyah, ala Ibn Majah, volume 2, page 407, and the phrase, we do not think there is anything similar or anything better for those who love one another than marriage, may be understood to refer to two or more, or two people. Because we said the wording can carry both. Some riwayat, or sometimes it's read as two people who love each other, or people who love each other. He says, what does it mean? He says the meaning is that if there is love between two people, that love cannot be increased or made to last longer by anything like marriage. If there is marriage as well as that love will increase and grow stronger every day. Allahumma barak. Very beautiful benefit. Because if the affinity is there and the love, it grows day by day. Like if we find today, and this is a reminder for all those brothers and sisters who find themselves in error, that any other relationship besides the marriage will not foster love. This is what the ulama are telling us, not. Because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam shows in this hadith that the love will come, the true one, even if there is something before of attraction. Why did he encourage marriage? Because it fosters it. It encourages and continues it. And that's what the ayah is telling us. And so here we take لَمْ نَرَى لِلْمُتَحَابَّيْنِ مِثْلِ النِّكَاحِ, that this is a fa'idah, that there should be something between the two, that when they first see each other, or that they see each other, or that they're attracted to one another. That's the key. If there's no attraction, then that's not going to help foster the relation. So the compatibility is, part of compatibility is strong attraction or chemistry between the two. And the ulama, they mentioned this, so let this be known, because some people have misunderstanding of the deen, because they're not studying the books of the ulama, but they're looking at the other things that are offered by our Western society. And Western society is saying that love and marriage can only happen through illicit relationships and getting to know one another and dating and whatever else haram. And we say that's not true. And next week we'll answer some more points on this. Thirdly, I'll mention one more. Similarity. Another way to help establish compatibility is that both spouses, i.e. potential spouses, should have similar personalities or characteristics and goals. They should have similarities in what they want in life. Their characters, their akhlaq, or their personality, who they are, should be equivalent, should be similar. And this is important because if you look from the beginning stages when someone's getting married, if this is not established, this is one of the ways that things won't go very far. And this is important because I believe that non-Muslims, they see some statements. I guess it's more popular in pop culture, but it's not scientifically proven, nor from the Sharia, where people say opposites attract. Opposites attract has no evidence in studies or in the deen. Allahu Ta'ala alam. There's nothing like this. Rather, the deen teaches us similar people come together and opposites go against each other. So this idea that opposites attract is pop culture without study. And this is important because these kind of popular representations found in media and movies, they corrupt the mind of the person. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha, she said, he said, alayhi salatu salam, souls are like recruited troops. Those who have like qualities are inclined to one another. Those who have dissimilar qualities, they differ. This hadith, many of us we heard before, but interpretation we're going to offer. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, this is hadith Bukhari Muslim, الأرواح جند مجندة الأرواح جنود مجندة فما تعارف منها ائتلف وما تناكر منها اختلف. So here the hadith says the souls are like recruited troops. فما تعارف منها, whichever these souls, they have similarities. or familiarity. I'talaf, they have inclined to one another, the inclination. وَمَا تَنَاكَرَ مِنْهَا اخْتَلَفَ, and whichever of them they find dissimilarity, they differ. What does this hadith mean? The ulama, they have offered many interpretations for this hadith. And it's actually a fascinating hadith. But we'll offer some of the interpretations from the interpretations offered from the likes of Imam al-Khattabi, rahimahullah, Imam al-Nawawi, Hafid ibn Hajar, may Allah have mercy upon all of them. They offered various interpretations, because this hadith is actually a secret of life. Every one of us has experience where they met someone, you never met them before, but as soon as you speak to them or you sit with them, as if you've been friends for years. That's what the hadith, this is the quality that we're talking about. It's something that runs deep. And this benefit is one of the things that we can live with and we can witness. The ulama say something which is witnessed. Well, so what's one of the meanings? Imam al-Nawawi says one of the meanings, it was said that the two souls, if they have agreement in attributes or qualities, which Allah has innately put in each soul, then they'll have harmony between one another due to their nature. So one meaning is that two people get together, or when they meet with another, or in this case they're trying to get married to another, immediately they get along. Immediately they click, or they find easiness together. I'talaf, yani the hearts become inclined because the souls have inclined. And so why is that important? When we talk about today compatibility, this is what most people are talking about. That you want to find someone they think is the right person. And so the deen, it doesn't negate finding that right person. But what does it mean? This is important. How does it look? Or how to go after that? Because if someone just has a fascination or fantasy in their mind, then that's not also going to be helpful. Imam Ibn Qayyim mentions a beautiful speech here. I'm going to read now some of the speech of Imam Ibn Qayyim, because he actually speaks about this in his kitab, Rawdatul Muhibbeen, the Garden of the Lovers, page 105. This kitab, Ibn Qayyim writes about love and the permissible types of love and the impermissible types of love and how to cure those things. For example, like having ishq, obsessive love and addiction. And it's a book similar, before him, a similar topic was written about by Ibn Hazm in the Ring of the Dove. These two books, the ulama discuss these kind of topics in light of the kitab and the sunnah and experience, which shows you our tradition, our deen is not against the idea of love, but the haram love, we're not for it. The lusts and the things which are leading to haram. Look what Ibn Qayyim writes. So the brother and sister pay attention to this. He says, when he talks about suitability and harmony between people, he says harmony and suitability of two types. He says verily that the harmony between the souls is from the strongest means to love. Every person yearns for one who is suitable to him. And this harmony is of two types. One is original, in terms of one's creation, and external, according to one's creation. So one of them is original. Yani somebody meets somebody, they're being created among the similar inclination, or their souls are alike, or there's something net secret that just, like we said, they immediately bond. Again, some ulama, the way they interpret the hadith earlier was that Allah created two groups of people. Souls that get along and souls that don't. Souls that are good and souls that are bad. So those who are good immediately get along, and those who are bad immediately don't get along. So this is what he's talking about, the origin. And the second one is external or temporary. And that's compatibility that's due to closeness, like someone being a neighbor to someone or knowing someone for a while, or due to sharing in some matter. Tayyib? He says, whoever has a similar purpose. Now this is the point. The first one we just mentioned, the hadith, it's initial, it's something innate. Immediately you find this connection. But the second type is something which is external, something which is temporary. He says, whoever has a similar purpose, yani in life or what they want, whoever's purpose is similar to your purpose, then there will be a harmony between your soul and theirs. But if their purposes differ, then the agreement or the affinity disappears. This is a very powerful point. If you have a purpose that you're looking for to achieve, when you have somebody else with a similar purpose as yours, then immediately your souls find harmony with one another. But if you guys differ on the purposes that you try to obtain and what you want, immediately you find that the agreement is disappearing. He says, as for the harmony in origin, then it's an agreement in characteristics, resemblance of the soul. For every soul yearns for its similar counterparts. If it resembles something, then it's drawn to it by nature. So here, Ibn Qayyim is telling us there's two types of suitability or harmony. One is innate, that we said it's like a secret in society, life. It's very difficult to explain. You meet someone, immediately you get along. You meet someone, immediately you don't like them. And the second one is the external one. Somebody's maybe has this worldview about how to live. This is my outlook in life. You meet someone else that has the same outlook in life. You get along now. But if that person's outlook changes from the one that you have, now you're not getting along. So here, I want to mention a benefit from this statement of Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah, which is that if a person is finding a partner, it's recommended that they share in the personality or goals or outlooks in life. They have some kind of connection. And that's why it's important that the person who's getting married has to know who they are to begin with. Because if you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want, and you don't know what the objectives of your life. And if you don't know what you want, you will get what you don't want. And this is why so many people, maybe when they're getting married, if they're too young, they're already changing so much turbulence in their life. They're not ready, maybe. They don't know who they are. Maybe they don't have any plan in life. Maybe they're all constantly changing. And what happens then is, if two people get married, and one of them starts changing their purpose, as Ibn Qayyim mentioned, versus the other person whose purpose was initially the same, then they grow far apart from one another. But as Ibn Qayyim is teaching us beautifully here, if they have the initial, right, from the souls are inclining, and on top of that they share the same qasd, same purpose, then inshallah more harmony. Hakada. This is a very deep point. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is that this is what Islam teaches about people, not just marriage, but people in general. So we should take this consideration, and I advise the people, from what the ulama are telling us here, but we take a great advice, all of us, that we should try our best to work on ourselves beforehand, to know who we are, what we want, and where we're going. And that way, the person won't be disappointed, because they're looking for someone who is different than them, or they're going and they find someone totally different, or that they're growing. Every day we're growing, but we're not growing to the point where we want to change our usul all the time, or every day our outlook changes. These are not conducive for longevity. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. So those are three considerations of compatibility on top of what we said of the good qualities someone has to have. Tayyib, inshallah today we'll continue now to section 3. Section 3 now is the steps to finding a spouse. And we'll start this and we'll finish next week more. Because of the time, and I don't want to go too long. I want to just mention so the points can be digested. So section 3 now is finding a spouse. Now that we know what we are supposed to look for, the qualities, and we also know the importance of compatibility, the next step is how and where do you find a potential spouse? What's the Sharia way of finding one? So we'll mention now, in the Sharia, in the legislation of Islam, there are two overall ways to find a spouse. Number one is by way of referral. That is, someone finds a potential spouse for you, to which you propose to, or someone offers you their daughter. For example, wali offers a man his daughter, or a woman or another woman that he suggests is good to marry, or somebody goes and finds a suitable woman and tells you about her. This is for the men, and vice versa. This is referral. Someone helping you to arrange and refer you. You're not doing it yourself. That's there's proofs for that one. I will mention it. The second one is proposing yourself directly. Yeah, you go and you find a person who is not married, who is permissible for you to marry, and you propose yourself directly. That's the second method. You propose directly. So you find someone yourself, and you propose directly. Tayyib, what's the proof for the first one? There's a number of proofs to show that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sometimes he will send someone to help him find a wife. For example, Hadith Sahih al-Nasa'i, Hadith 3251. When Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to marry Zainab, radiallahu ta'ala anha, he sent Zayd. He said, propose marriage to her on my behalf. So Zayd went and said, "Oh Zainab, rejoice, for the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam has sent me to you to propose marriage on your behalf, on his behalf," until the end of the hadith. So the Rasul ﷺ sent Zayd to propose on his behalf. So he sent someone to go and find, right? He had someone in mind and he sent someone to propose on his behalf. Another example is the marriage of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. Khawla bint Hakim, may Allah be pleased with her. She's the one who suggested the Nabi ﷺ to marry Aisha. As it comes in a lengthy hadith in Musnad Imam Ahmad, hadith number 25,769. 25769. And Shu'ayb al-Naud, Shaykh Shu'ayb al-Naud, rahimahullah, said the hadith Hassan in his checking. So the hadith Aisha, how did Rasul marry Aisha? It was Khawla bint Hakim. Alright, so she's the one who proposed that. طيب, another example, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when Hafsa was going to be married, he went, alayhi salatu wasalam. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu went and he offered Hafsa to Abu Bakr and to Uthman, and they both declined because they knew Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wanted to marry her. Hadith Bukhari, hadith number 5129. So here we have examples of being referred to someone to marry, or somebody going and offering their daughter to others. And so if a person, for example, knows someone who wants to get married and the person can connect that person, that's what it means. That's one way to find. Asking or someone offering. Hatta fil Quran, even in the Quran we find an example of that. In the story of Musa alayhi salam and the Rajul Salih, the righteous man from Midian. Surah Al-Qasas, verse 27. So Surah 28, verse 27. When the daughter of Midian wanted to ask her father to hire Musa alayhi salam, the man said, I intend to wed one of these two daughters of mine to you. Why? Because he saw how good a man Musa alayhi salam was. Qawiyul Ameen. He was strong and he was trustworthy. And what does the trustworthiness mean? How does he know he's trustworthy? Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala fi tafsir, as you find tafsir ibn Kathir, I think originally in Ibn Abi Hatim, in his tafsir bi isnad sahih, that when Musa alayhi salam did the work for them, he watered or gave water to the goats or the sheep for them. She said, come, I want to take you to my father. So Musa had her walk in front. Imagine that Musa had her walk in she had Musa walk in front and they walked behind and they directed him. Why? So that Musa is not looking at her when she's walking. Allahu Akbar. That's the kind of modesty and righteousness, because kana Musa alayhi salam rajulun hayyin, satirun hayy. Yani he was one who was modest and loved modesty, or shadid haya, because it comes in Sahihain. So what do we take from this? What's the benefit from that verse? The man offered his daughter to Musa. طيب, that's one way. A side benefit, if someone asks you to go and propose on behalf of someone else, what do you do? So it comes in authentic narrations we took in our study of the book Al-Adhkar of Suyuti. When we studied that book, the summary and abridgment of Kitab Al-Adhkar, it's authentically reported from Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, that if he used to be said, or he used to, if he was called by someone to propose on behalf of another man, means if someone says, can you please go and propose to so-and-so woman on my behalf, then Ibn Umar, he will go to the person and say, all praise due to Allah, may peace and blessing be upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Verily so-and-so proposes to you. If you marry him, all praise due to Allah. If you reject him, then subhanallah. Reported originally in Bayhaqi, with greater authentic by Imam al-Albani in Al-Kitab al-Irwa al-Gharid, volume 6, page 221. So that's a benefit if you are going to be asked to do that. طيب, the second way is to propose directly yourself. Propose directly yourself. And that means that person directly finds a woman, like a man sees a woman who he finds to be attractive, and he knows she's not mahram and she's not married, or she knows that she is not in her iddah, etc. So it's important, he has to know that this woman is one who's marriageable. Then he can directly propose. As the permanent committee, Al-Lajnah to Da'ima, the permanent committee in Saudi Arabia, they They were asked, is it permissible for a man to propose to the woman whom he would like to marry? And if the answer is in the affirmative, what are the conditions for making such a proposal? And the Lajna, they said, it is permissible for him to do so, provided there is no khalwa. And there is no khalwa, there is no seclusion between the two genders, as long as that's not involved, and that he has a real desire to actually marry her. And may Allah grant us success, and may peace and blessing be upon our Prophet Muhammad, his family, his companions, altogether. This is found in Fatawa number 6471. So that's a benefit that a man can directly propose to a woman, that he wishes to marry her and he would like the details of her wali. Now, does this include a woman directly proposing to a man? Can a woman directly propose herself or offer herself to marriage to a man? Jawab, na'am. Yes, it is. And the proof for that is the hadith in Sahihain of the woman who offered herself to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the masjid to marry her. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he did not want to marry her because he was not in need of marriage at that time, another man married her, as we know, and he married him off, alayhi salatu for the amount of Quran he memorized. Imam al-Bukhari, he writes in his Sahih chapter, there's a Kitab al-Nikah, chapter, a woman can present herself to a righteous man for marriage. It's Bukhari's bab, tabweeb, that's Bukhari's bab. And that's his istidlal as well. Ibn Arabi al-Maliki died 543 Hijri. He writes in his Kitab Ahkam al-Quran, volume 3, page 496. 496. Imam Ibn Arabi al-Maliki, the scholar of tafsir and fiqh and hadith, etc. He writes in Ahkam al-Quran, which is one of the older books and reliable books for the rulings derived from the Quran. Underneath the verse in the story of Musa I mentioned just a moment ago, chapter 28, verse 27, he says from this ayah we take that what is good is that a wali presents his daughter, right, the woman who is in his guardianship, to a man, and it's also allowed for a woman to present herself to a righteous man, taking as example the righteous salaf in this regard. Then, the benefit we take from that is, it's permissible for a woman to do that, just as it is for a man. Lacking. Now, what about advice? Is it something good for a man to be directly approaching women who are possibly married in the souk, for example, in the market, or in front of the masjid, or something like this, or a woman, the vice versa? This is why it could be problematic at times, and it's advised to be very cautious of, because it's possible that a man may just go and propose to all kinds of women, and they're married, and they go and tell their husbands, and it creates a big problem. Or the person himself is not azim, he's not resolved to marry, just going around and asking, and that's not allowed either. He has to be knowing what he's doing, just like he's not allowed to ask a woman who is in a state where she's maybe in a irrevocable divorce, and she's still in her iddah. You can't do that because she's still married to someone else, etc. So it would not be advisable to walk around and just advise to propose to anyone. Some of the young brothers maybe ask this question, can I go to school or work and just propose to a woman? You have to know beforehand, tafasil, know the details. You have to be intelligent and wise about what you're doing, and you should not be looking for problems and making people uncomfortable. And that's why you have to be wise about them. That's why the first route is probably more safer and recommended. You ask around. But if the chance you do, it's not prohibited, provided that you know this person is marriageable and there's no problems, as you mentioned, that the person is already married or is mahram for you or etc. Some people ask, what about using matrimonial sites? What's the ruling on using these Islamic sites, matrimonial apps or sites? Can we use them to find a spouse? Some of the ulama, they talk about these things. And they say in general that if the site is free, it's important. Not everyone speaks about this, but some people of knowledge spoke about this, or they discussed it a little bit, that if these sites, we were to find that they were free from prohibitions, number one, and they're done in accordance with Sharia, truly, then it's not impermissible, wallahu a'lam, to use them. However, there are certain examples of many of these apps and sites they do things which are not permissible. Therefore, it's very important the person be very, very careful even before looking into these things. What are some of the prohibitions that they fall into, some of these matrimonial sites? Number one, sharing photos of both the man and the woman. And that's haram. As we know, the hadith in all 6 books of the hadith and other books, right, the various books of hadith collections, we know the prohibition of picture taking. And so this is not allowed for a man to share his picture, a woman to share a picture, people saving them, downloading them, sharing them, spreading them. And this is something amr waqi'i. This is an affair which is happening. And that's absolutely not permissible. Because these are people's honor that people are playing with. Number 2, it's not allowed for these sites to offer and ask people to write extreme details, right? Extreme detailed descriptions of the person, the bodily form and appearance. Many of these sites, you find them, they ask a description for the person, and then the person writes very, very descriptive things about how they look, especially for the woman, or even for the man. And this is not allowed in Islam to do that. Haram. As if a man will be looking, just by reading it, he can imagine how she looks. Hadith Bukhari. لا تباشر المرأة المرأة فتنعتها لزوجها كأنها ينظر إليها. It is not allowed for a woman. A woman should not look at or touch another woman to describe her to her husband in such a way that he's actually looking at her. Right? Another riwayah, لا تباشر المرأة المرأة حتى تصفها لزوجها كأنما ينظر إليها. A woman is not allowed to touch or describe another woman to a man to the point that he can imagine he can see her. So some of these websites, they ask people to describe their bodily form and how, size they are and this, and more than this in the general. Not just ladalik. Because a man can then imagine exactly how she looks. What about then if they put a picture on top of that? What's left? Thirdly, offering a means for men and women to chat. They're talking to one another and exchanging messages without the wali, without the mahram. Not yajuz, not allowed. And so therefore, with all these considerations, it's very good idea to avoid these sites, because the experience of those people who did engage with them before has come to the reality that they're not clean. Maybe some of them, yes, are much better than others, and some of them maybe are free of them. So if we were to imagine that yes, there's some which are free of all of this, then we cannot say it's haram. Rather, we would advise to use the traditional means, for it's safer and from any kind of problems. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Last point, we'll do 3.1. Now the proposal stage. Now that a person knows he's ready to get married now, he or she now knows what they're looking for, they know who they are, they have everything ready. Now it's time to start the process of what's called al-khitbatu. Al-khitbah is the proposal stage or courtship. It's not the khutbah. Khutbah is Yom al-Jum'ah, when the Imam stands up, or Yom al-Eid. This is called khutbah. This is called khitbah. With the fatha and the kha. Khitbah. And the khitbah, it's actually like a proposal. That's what it is. To offer, to ask or request a man to request the hand of a woman. That's what it is. And so the ulama, they actually have a lot of ahkam. Ahkam al-khitbah, it's a lot. And the problem we might find is that a lot of times these ahkam are forgotten. And because of them, a lot of things happen which Allah musta'an should not have happened. Or sometimes the best method of doing things is not achieved. Sometimes the word is also used to refer to an engagement. Tayyib, to begin, a person, before they get started to look for a spouse, they have to make the intention and resolve to get married. They have to have the niyyah and they have to have azam. They have to be certain. It's not allowed for someone to begin the process and they're not serious. So for example, they're just looking around and asking around and they're really not trying to get married. Just want to talk to women, or women want to talk to a man. Not allowed. Abadan, not allowed. Have to be serious. So once that intention is ready, first step, the person begins by looking for a spouse in one of the two ways we mentioned. And this will involve physically looking, right? Can involve physically looking at the other gender, or asking around about the other gender. Because now we're going to get to the second stage. Because if you're asking around, that's one method. But if you're doing the second process, you're looking yourself, you can physically look. I'm going to talk more about that ahkam next week. But I want to get into this point. What does someone do in the first initial stages of marriage? Do they look for someone's deen, or they look for their beauty? A lot of brothers and sisters, they don't know. But the ulama say you look for beauty first, then deen. Lesh, why? I'm going to explain. It's a very important part. You first look if you're attracted to the person. Then you ask about their deen, not the other way around. Why? Pay attention to this. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, died 241 Hijri, he writes, or it's been recorded that he said, if a man proposes to a woman, he asks about her beauty first. If he's pleased, then he asks about her religion. If he's pleased with that, then he can get married. If he's not, it's both of them, they agreed, not just him, but even her. If he's not pleased, then he should reject her due to the deen. He should not first begin by asking about the religion, to which then, if he is pleased, ask about the beauty, to which then, if he's not pleased, he rejects her, because then he would not have rejected her due to the deen. So many of our scholars, the ulama, they say this is a mistake many young people they make. They first ask or they look for a woman who's practicing. And they say, mashallah, I'm going to go propose. Then they see how she looks or she sees how he looks, and they're not happy with one another, how they look, or they're not attracted. That's the better way. They don't find that attraction. Now, do they reject each other for the deen or for the beauty? You see, the hadith says, فَضْفَرْ بِذَاتِ الدِّينِ. You didn't do that. You rejected the person based on their appearance. Ibn Qudam writes in Mughni, volume 7, page 109, a man should choose a beautiful woman. And I explained last week, a woman should choose also a good-looking man, i.e., what they both consider good-looking. That's an important point. What they consider attractive and acceptable. That's why some ulama said it's not advisable that a man appoints a woman to look for him on his behalf for the woman. He should look, because he's the one. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Ibn Qudamah says he chooses a beautiful woman because she's more tranquil for his soul, helps lower his gaze, and is more complete in establishing love. So for that reason, it's legislated to look before marriage. This is very important. You look first, or you ask for the beauty first, i.e., how typically she looks, to which you are satisfied with that, then you proceed. Ibn Jawzi, he writes in Sayyid al-Khatir, Captured Thoughts, page 147 to 148 of the English. If a man, is after a wife, he should look at her, and if he feels there is chemistry between them, then he can proceed with the marriage. Not only that, but he then should find out the effect that she will have on him, because a sign of ultimate love is that he is not able to take his eyes away from her, and that whenever she is away from his sight, his heart becomes troubled and distressed until he sees her again. This is the pinnacle level of love, and there are many levels below this too. Each level brings forth different results and effects. This is the English translation of Sayyid al-Khatir. Imagine, Jawzi is giving a step-by-step process. This is important because this point, many people may not know this. Because if you're not happy with the person, i.e. attracted to them, then what are you going to do after? You're gonna put yourself in a problem. And next week we're going to talk about how do you reject someone properly, ala kitab wa sunnah, because that's a fiqh too. Ibn Qayyim writes beautifully, after he talks about what's the wisdom behind looking at each other. Why the spouses allowed to look at each other, or potential spouses. He says, so like that, it was legislated for the suitor to look at the woman, for verily if he witnesses her beauty and good looks, that will lead to obtaining love and affinity between them, as it comes in the hadith. Which hadith? He brings the following proof, and this is one of the proofs for the idea of looking, and I'm going to talk about more next week. Hadith Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Mughira ibn Shu'bah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wanted to marry a woman. So Rasulullah said to him, "Idhhab fanzur ilayha." Go and take a look at her. فَإِنَّهُ أَحْرَى أَنْ يُؤْدَمَ بَيْنَكُمَا. For this, looking at one another, it's more likely to create love between you. Look at the wording Rasulullah said. أحرى. This is ta'aleed now. He's giving rationale and reasoning. فَإِنَّهُ أَحْرَى. It's more likely أَنْ يُؤْدَمَ بَيْنَكُمَا. That it puts what? The love and affection between you. And this, and the riwayah says بَيْنَكُمَا. Why? Man can look at a woman, and a woman can look at a man. Because we said she also wants someone she's pleased with. Look what Mughira says. That's what Anas ibn Malik said. He says, so Mughira, he did that. He went and he looked at her. فَذَكَرَ مِن مُوَافَقَتِهَا. After he went and he looked at her, he says, if he found that they got along. They were compatible. This is a hadith. This is a hadith, sahih, if you imagine others. Rasul said to go look. He looked, he was pleased, and he found compatibility. So this dispels, without any shadow of doubt, those people who say, oh, how could the Islamic process of marriage work? How does the Islamic process of marriage work when you don't get to talk or you don't get to know? talking and getting to know is not the issue. Because those things don't guarantee you're going to get along anyways. But Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he said go and look, and he did, because it's sunnah and deen, then came the muwafaqah. And I'm saying this clearly because many people, they've been brainwashed by the Western concept that you have to spend a long time dating and getting to know each other. No. Follow the sunnah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and next week I'm going to explain this more. Last point for today. The person who's physically going to go look for a spouse or going to see them, the ulama said this is a very important point. All four madhab agreed that it's only allowed for a person to physically look at his opposite gender if he has the resolve to get married. This is important. I mentioned this point. If he's not getting married, it's haram for him to be looking around other genders, the opposite gender, because the ayah, Surah Al-Nur, ayah 20, Surah 24, verse 30 and 31. So a man won't have to lower their gaze. If you're not trying to get married with serious resolves, haram. And this is so some people that shaitan tries to trick them and say, I'm trying to get married. And he's looking at everyone in the suq. What's this? He's looking at people who are already married. Astaghfirullah al-azim. No. This is not Islam. Now, I also want to one more point. Because some people, when they hear this, they say, then I'm going to keep looking. And they give this excuse, I'm trying to get married. The ulama also add a very important point, which is, it's not allowed just to look freely. You can only look at the potential candidates and investigate the candidates who you're most likely able to marry. And this is the view of the Shafi'iyya, the Hanabila, the Malikiyya, and Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen. What does this mean? If you know there's a woman who a man wants to marry, or he wants to marry, but he knows she's way above his league in wealth, in status, maybe, and is not compatibility from that angle, maybe. It's haram for him to look at her and try to get to try to just look at her because he knows there's most likely he's not going to make it. You see, the ulama put these conditions for a reason. Because some will say, I'm trying to get married, and this is a princess. You're not going to get married to her. Or, let's say someone knows a particular family, they don't want their daughter except to marry someone. And he most likely realizes this point. If he doesn't know, he's allowed. But if he knows, most likely he's not going to go through. It's not allowed for him to look because the evidences to show the looking are specific to the one who's capable of marrying, is serious about marriage, and is most likely to happen. Otherwise, the general evidences about lowering the gaze take precedence. Then we'll stop with this much for today, and next week we'll go from the khitbah, the actual process when he actually found someone he's attracted to. What happens next? Barakallahu feekum. If anyone has any questions, we'll take them. And I apologize for the length of the lesson. We try to be more detailed as we can. Shall anyone have any questions? We take them. Anyone have any questions? Okay, inshallah. No questions. The next week, inshallah, we'll go from 3.2 about the fiqh of the proposal and the steps that need to be taken. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.